Alrighty then. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Matthew Baker of Beautiful New York Tours. During our first round of virtual tours online, I did a video in each of the 5 boroughs of New York City except for one. Each of the boroughs in which I did at least one video is either an island or part of an island. But up to the north, the Bronx is the only part of New York City that is also connected to the North American mainland. Now, a gentleman that I've worked with asked me to do a piece about a little house in a little park up in the Grand Concourse area of the Bronx. The house and the park are both named after a legendary person who lived there, and his name was Edgar Allan Poe. The Poe Cottage is one of the amazing historic house museums of New York, and it is now located in Poe Park, so named in honor of the house being there. Now, Edgar Allan Poe, first of all, the father of American poetry, and in many ways the father of the detective story, and certainly one of the great popularizers of supernatural and horror stories. He was the original goth. New Yorkers are famous for wearing all black. Poe was doing that before it was cool. Like many artists and writers, Poe didn't make very much money in his lifetime, and there are many places he lived in New York. He moved around a lot because he couldn't pay his rent. So you can take walks all through the East Village and Greenwich Village and the Upper West Side. Of course, it's well known he also lived in Philadelphia and quite famously in Baltimore. But it was his house in the Bronx that has been preserved for people to get an idea of what that life was like. And it's very worthwhile because when you think of the great historic house museums, when you think of places like the Hamilton Grange or the Merchant's House Museum or the J. Pierpont Morgan Library, all of them are well known for their grandeur and elegance. But for all of these, very worthy and interesting examples of how rich people lived in New York, the Poe Cottage is notable for being one of the very few examples, preserved examples, of how a poor man and his family lived in New York. He lived there when he was married to his young bride, Virginia, who died shortly later from tuberculosis, a very common cause of death in those days. One of the other great Poe sites in the city is the Northern Dispensary in Greenwich Village, where Poe himself was treated for a head cold and where Virginia was diagnosed with her ultimately fatal illness. But when Poe was living there in the Bronx, you can easily imagine him walking around the neighborhood, strolling across the river into Manhattan via the High Bridge, which happily a few years ago was reopened after many years of being closed to foot traffic, and also walking around the grounds of what is now Fordham University, but in those days St. John's College. He undoubtedly would have known a lot of the people there, including perhaps the college's founder, Archbishop John Hughes, with whom Poe could easily have held his own in a conversation about religion, the occult, various mythologies and legends, and of course, doctrine of the day. So definitely do not imagine that the Bronx is only worth going to for its famous zoo or for Yankee Stadium. There are many magnificent cultural places there, and I definitely recommend a visit to Poe Cottage. It is definitely a place to feel that spirit of one of the truly great literary artists of our country's history. So I would love to show it to you when you have the chance to come to New York, when we are past the age of the mask and the gloves. Come to New York City, and please check me out at Beautiful New York Tours. You can search Beautiful New York Tours on Facebook or email me at baker.tours@yahoo.com. Again, that is baker.tours@yahoo.com. Thank you very much.